It's straight out. I can't talk to you. Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another Telling It Like It Is. My name is Jade Alberts, the founder of Peer Guidance. We're a purpose before profit group that really helps you on all aspects of your business. Between myself and my partners, we've had 9 exits, and we're always excited to give back and share our knowledge. Scrolling across the bottom there is our psychology, our reality of entrepreneurship. The next course is Wednesday, the 18th, which will be next week from 4 to 7 p.m. at Miller Thompson. We're excited about it. We've got over 80 people signed up right now. Again, it is for you, for your mental health. We all know how difficult it can be, taking that journey alone. So check it out and we'll go from there. And speaking about help, I am excited about our conversation. It is going to be an all Saskatchewan conversation today. I want to show my shirt that, I want to give a shout out to Stephanie Klovchuk for giving it Discover Saskatoon. I wear it everywhere. Everyone loves it. It's Calgary, Saskatchewan's largest city. So I've got my rider gear. I got my Notre Dame Hounds, my Melville. Tracy, how are you today?
I'm great. I love that you're, Sask proud today. That's excellent.
Big Sask, always Sask proud. That never goes away, ever, ever.
Love it. It's a great city. I'm in Saskatoon. That's where I'm talking to you from, and it's a great city.
Oh, it's a fantastic city. I mean, we live there. We've been in Calgary now for 23 years, but Saskatchewan's always home. Our lakes there, all of our, lots of friends there, and everything. So it's never not going to be home ever.
Oh, great. Yeah. Prairie proud.
Prairie proud as usual, right? So, well, what I wanted to do is I'm excited. I didn't mention your company. It's BroadPR, and we always, I think there's a lot of confusion in the world about PR. I mean, and I usually have startups on here, and you've obviously been very successful, done business all over North America. So I think this is going to be such an interesting conversation. And again, there is a misconception about PR in my mind, and I'm sure we're going to clean that up. But before we get back and talking about that, I would love you to go back and talk a little bit about your journey into entrepreneurship and why you decided to, found BroadPR.
Well, thank you for asking. Thank you for having me here, by the way. I have to give a shout out to Lyndon Johnson, not the dead president, but one of the best PR practitioners I've ever had the pleasure of working with. He's been a part of our team. He's had his own company, and I really appreciate that he made the introduction. As far as my background, I was thinking about this, right as you asked it. I think I was 10 or 12 when I decided, I was an entrepreneur. I went around. I found these items that for me as a child were free. Peanut butter in the closet or the counter, and some bird seed. And I went out and got some pine cones, and I made like little bird feeders. And I thought, well, this is great. I'm going to make a profit because all of this was free to me. As a child, I didn't buy the peanut butter or the bird seed. That particular venture did not take off. I think my parents bought all of my bird feeders, but it put that spark in me. I think I've just always wanted to invent something, create something. I mean, I don't know if you remember, the Guinness World Book of Records. As a kid, I was always I wanted to break whatever record I could break, and I haven't done that either. But moving that, forward, when I was about 16, so I was in high school. I think I was a senior in high school. I was able to get an internship with a really large technology company. They don't exist anymore, but at the time they were a $4 billion company. It was Digital Equipment Corporation. And I was an intern there, and I really got that feel of working in business and so forth. And then upon graduating from university, I worked there full time. I met my PR mentor, who's so awesome. I have to give her a shout out, Ethel Caden. She put the first woman on the cover of Fortune magazine. It's amazing. And she's still my PR mentor today. So working in that large company, it was amazing. It gave me the contacts I needed, etc. But then there was a startup that needed some help. And I thought, well, hey, I did this during high school. I did this graduating from college and so forth. And I went to that startup and I got the bug. I mean, I just never went back to that big corporate situation. It was a good learning experience for me. And I think it gave me some, foundational, certainly contacts and networks and so forth. But startups, I mean, that's just where I've been passionate. So then after I was with the startup and we had gone public and we made acquisitions and we did all of that. We were no longer startup-y. We were kind of big, and I decided to leave that and start BroadPR. I went into I was heading marketing at the time, and the CMO, I went into his office and I said, I have good news and bad news. I'll give you the bad news first. I'm resigning, and I'll give you 2 weeks. I'll give you a month. I'll give you whatever time you need. But the good news is I'm starting a business, and you can hire me to do what I was doing. He wasn't all too pleased, but he was definitely our first client. So that worked out really well.
I always talk about, first of all, I just want to agree with you with Lyndon Johnson. I met him through Startup Canada when I was kind of doing some stuff with them, and I loved Lyndon's Founders Coffee, and I loved his logo and everything about it, and
Yeah.
that's something that we've been running here for 7 years now and taken off. And I know Lyndon always jokes about it. He goes, "You've done a better job than I have," and I just think Toronto's too big to have. Calgary's a good sized city where we can still all drive downtown type thing, right? Toronto, no one's coming downtown unless you have to.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm a big fan of Lyndon and what he does with his comms, and a big shout out to him.
Mm-hmm.
And, and then to kind of expand on what you just said there, like it is, and we talk about it all the time, the importance of learning on someone else's dime, the importance of, working with somebody, working with a big organization, finding things that you can you find a gap in the system or something that you can do better. And I don't know how many times on this show that I've heard they became my first customer.
Really? Yeah, that's right. That's what happens, right? And they were a very long-term customer. And like many of the clients we've had over the years, we worked ourselves out of a job. They ended up getting acquired by a very large company, and they no longer needed a boutique firm, which is what we are. We're a small boutique firm. We act as a team member, similar to what you do with your clients, right? Like we are part of the team, and we attend weekly meetings. We're part of the marketing team or the comms team. And it's just a way for startups and smaller companies to have access to talent without, having more employees. They can have all of this talent that they have access to. And we primarily focus on startups. We do have some larger companies that we're still working with. But those companies, even though they're larger, maybe, under 1,000 people, but, certainly more than 500, they still act like a startup. They still have that drive, that innovation. And so we still have that feel with them as well. But the thing about startups is, and you talked about your exits, which is fantastic. That's amazing. We have been in business since 2001. And I was looking back before this call, and we've had, it's between like 12 and 15 startups over the last 23 years that have had some sort of exit. Most of them have been acquired. And so again, we work ourselves out of a business, out of some work, because when they go to that larger company, they either go with a much larger firm, we're talking about 50 or however many thousands of dollars a month, or a lot of times they'll go with internal, like they'll build out, their team internally, and that's great. I don't mind. I'm quite pleased and honored to be a part of their journey, and you just have to know that you had a small bit of influence in helping them get there.
Oh, and I think that's why, I'm so happy Lyndon made this introduction, because everything that you just say resonates so much with me. And when we've had a few conversations, it's always been like, woo, we've kind of have that same philosophy, right? Like, even with peer guidance, our goal is for you not to be our client. We're there to replace us. We're there to make sure that we can hire somebody, so you have somebody that you can build on your team and build your culture and be there for you long term, which a lot of consultants don't want to do, which, pisses me off. But, I'd rather see you spend a little bit of money to make sure that you get your plan forward, and then you can, hire within.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And I mean, we're very happy for long-term clients. Don't get me wrong. We have, I can think of one right now, SmartBear, which is just a fantastic company. And they have acquired a lot of companies. That's how they've grown, some of the ways they've grown their business. And, their CEO, I've had the pleasure of being on various interviews with him. And a lot of times he'll be asked, startups want to know, like a company like SmartBear that buys a bunch of companies, these startups want to know, how do we get acquired? What are you looking for? And I think one of the number one things he talks about is fit, culture fit. You can have a great product, but when you acquire a company, whether it's 3 people or 30 people, you want to make sure there's a fit within the organization. And so I think that's how they've been successful. And that's one of the things I would certainly, as we talk to startups, I would talk about fit in working with them as well. Like the nice thing about working for yourself is that you can choose who you work with. Unlike family, who you can't pick, right? Like you actually can pick who you want to work with. And that's the other thing we like. We only take on clients that we, quite frankly, get along with, and we believe in what they're doing. They have trust in us. We have trust in them. Those things are really, really deeply important. And that ties into PR perfectly, because PR is really about relationships. It's relationships with certainly the media and journalists, analysts, but it's also relationships with, any kind of public communication and whoever receives that. It could be an employee, it could be a potential employee, it could be an investor, it could be a partner. Anyone who gets that kind of public communication from a company, they in turn you're building trust when you get that type of communication, right?
No, absolutely. And I would love to talk about the journey of PR, right? Everybody's like, "Oh my God, I need PR because now I'm in a crisis," right? Like I gotta spin this. So everybody thinks that's when you need PR. But I want to dive earlier when you say you work with a lot of startups,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, I can honestly say there's not a lot of startups that we talk to that says, "Oh, what about PR?" Right? So
Mm-hmm.
I would like to talk about this journey of a startup and how it can evolve through their lifespan of from a startup to a scale up to maybe a company now that's going to exit.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think, startups, it really depends on what stage they are, right? Like we have worked with many early stage companies, and the value of thinking about PR, let's talk about what PR is, right? It's public
Yes.
relations. A lot of times people think of PR, I think they think of ad agency, or they think of like publicist for, say, Ben Affleck, who I have met, by the way, but that's another story. He, but PR for our purposes is public relations. It's really any type of communication that, say, an individual or an organization or a company has with the public. So that could be in the form of a press release. It could be an article. It could be an interview. It could be, what they're doing online. And all of those public-facing communications, there needs to be some sort of management of that. Otherwise, as you mentioned, with crisis PR, which is another thing that we do, you don't want to get to that point where that's when you're thinking about PR. It's, think about it this way. It's relationship building. So I'm an early stage company. I may not need a big firm. I may use a boutique firm like us, or even an individual consultant, that's maybe just doing some things off and on as needed. I don't believe startups, unless they're heavily, heavily funded and they need to make a big launch, I don't believe they need these large firms. They really don't. In some cases, they may not even need PR at that point, because you and I were talking earlier about a situation where, you could maybe pull the trigger on PR and get awareness and get people writing about you and talking about you, and then they want your product or service, but it's not ready yet. So you don't want to do it too soon. But there are things you can do to communicate, say, your thought about where the industry is going, or position the leaders in the company, the founder, or other key stakeholders, position them as thought leaders. So now you're getting your thoughts out there. So whether it's a technology company, or maybe a B2C, a consumer facing company, or it could be a construction firm, or it could be a toy company. I mean, it doesn't have to. We focus on tech, but all of these other companies, they certainly need to provide, communicate with the public, right? So in terms of when to use a PR agency or a consultant, or to get help, right? I would certainly recommend they think about who their audience is, think about who they're trying to reach. And once they know that, they can decide, like, how are we going to reach them? Are we going to reach them through PR? Are we going to reach them through, advertising, SEO stuff, inbound marketing, all of that thing? Or are we just going to do word of mouth, and we're going to we're going to speak on podcasts like this. We're going to, go to events. Maybe we're going to do a lot of online messaging and communications and so forth. It's PR, like life, is all about connections. You and I were connected by someone. I did not know who you were until we were introduced, right? Yep. I just didn't. But now I know who you are, and I can recommend you. I can recommend your organization to people who need it. And you can do the same for me. If we hadn't been connected, we just wouldn't know each other. You're not going to search for me and find out that this Boston-based PR firm is also in Saskatoon and helping people in Canada. You just wouldn't find that. You wouldn't be looking for it. You don't know what you don't know, right? So it's about connection. So think about that with the media. If you're a startup and you have the greatest solution, and you think it's just going to sell itself, excuse me, and you have some great talent, and you've got some great investment in working with you to try to do an exit and maybe raise more money and stuff. And you say, well, this will just sell itself, and the need is so big. Well, again, if people don't know about you, or your target audience is not aware of who you are, I don't know how. I mean, they just, again, don't know what they don't know. So making those connections, having a third party, whether it's the media, a journalist, an analyst, somebody who's not you, talk about you, is really what PR is.
And we don't talk about ourselves enough. I mean, having this show and things that's why this show started. We weren't shouting all the great things that are happening in our community, in our province, and that's what it was there for. And we are a little bit Canadian when it comes to that. We are a little bit shy about bragging and boasting, and it's not even that. It's just sharing our successes, sharing what we're doing good, and telling the world how we can help them. And
absolutely. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I don't know if it's a prairie thing or if it's a Canadian thing. Yeah, but it's also it's a little bit of a Canadian thing too. I mean, Canadians are very, what's the current term on Instagram? Demure. They just don't. Saskatchewan. I mean, Saskatchewan is like one of the bread baskets of the world. I think it makes the most lentils. It's got the wheat, and I mean it invented the ATM. I mean all of these things, and people don't really know about it. I mean, we know about it, but globally, I don't know how many people realize how many amazing, and it's not just the agricultural piece. It's biotech, and it's sustainability, and it's tech. There's some great tech companies here. I think did Skip the Dishes come from here, or something like that?
They were going to U of S, right?
Yeah. So I think there's so much opportunity in Canada for startups to rise above the rest just by using PR, and they could do it themselves. A CEO can reach out. You can start local. A CEO could, or a partner, or founder could just, again, figure out who your audience is. If you are selling to a chemist, you're probably not gonna being covered by some toy magazine won't probably move the needle at all, right? You need to know who your audience is. And then you can do a little research. We have some wonderful tools nowadays. You can ask ChatGPT, who's covering this particular, industry that I'm trying to break into, or who you yourself could see, well, where do I get information? Where do I read? How do I learn? And you could just reach out. The media, for all of the negative things that's been said about the media, especially over the last few years. I mean, there are some amazing journalists who are, reporting, and they are wearing many, many hats. So, and they're getting thousands and thousands of pitches a day, a week. It's just a flood of stuff. So you got to keep reaching out, and you've got to have those, again, it's relationships. You've got to build relationships, and it can't be, you asked earlier about crisis PR, and you said, oh, nobody talks about PR, and then they're in a crisis, so they need to do PR. That really is, you definitely need to do something if you get in a crisis, but it really is too late. It's you've got to already have those relationships so that you can, drop some information, ping someone and say, hey, this is going on. I'd like to tell you about it first before it comes out. And you can do that if you have a relationship, right? Like think about like, it's that some people just want to reach out to the media when they're going to announce something big, but you've got to start that relationship building before then. You've got to say, hey, this is what we're doing. I see you've written about, X, Y, and Z. And we actually have some thoughts on that. And, I'm not expecting any coverage or anything. I just want to have an informational discussion, just like you and I talked when we first met. We had an informational discussion. There was no, I didn't talk with you thinking that I would be on your podcast. And, I didn't think, I wasn't talking to you to get something out of you. I was talking because a mutual connection introduced us. And so that's exactly how it is with PR. A PR expert like myself or others, they will know who to connect you with. And that's where the value is. You can spend your time trying to search that and seek that out. But in our case, we already have relationships with a lot of, really good journalists and analysts and influencers. So we can make that connection faster than, say, a startup could. And a startup, a founder, like I said, they could go out and try to reach out to media, but I don't know if that's the best use of their time. They could use a professional to maybe do that work for them.
And that's so true, right? Especially when we're going to be talking about, getting your message out there, storing. We call it the prairie way, right? It's just the way we are, the way we're built, the way we're raised. And I mean, and Keith says it, Carlson, here in the chat. I mean, when a leader shows pride and is willing to talk, so will the team members, right? And it's a trickle down effect, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And again, say if you're an early stage or just starting to scale up as a founder, what is the best use of your time? Because, time waits for nobody, right? So are you better off selling? Are you better off maybe having somebody craft a message for you, help you a little bit with your marketing? You don't have to spend a lot of money on it. But again, if you're going to, you can reach out to Beta Kit yourself and Dave and them and say, hey, are we going to be able to do this? Or do you want somebody to kind of put a nice little list together for you, give you updates, and really, really share your message, with the world?
Right. And that thing about being consistent, if you think about it, like again, PR is no different than just how we live our lives. It's about connection, but it's also about consistency. Think about, a family member or a friend that only comes to you when they need money, right? Like that gets old really quick, right? Like at some point it's like, hey, you're not spending your life with me. You're not walking life with me, but you do want to talk to me when you need something. That's the same thing with the media, right? Like there are some companies that will just be like, they'll just reach out to, the media and say, oh, like, can you please cover me? Or we get people that call us, and believe it or not, we have, clients or potential clients that will call and say, hey, we want to be on the cover of Time magazine. And it's like, okay, that's not going to happen. And I'll tell you why.
Yet, maybe one day.
People just feel like they can, their story is so important, or they can just throw money at something. And, that does work in some scenarios. Obviously, we've seen things where people can throw money at things. And that's really more advertising. And there are a lot of things out there where you can pay. You can pay to write on Forbes magazine, or you can pay, for an infomercial, or you can pay for, coverage in certain pubs. But what I think is truly valuable, and some of those things have their place, but what's truly valuable is when you have reached out to people who can now communicate to your audience, and you have convinced them either through an interview, or you've shown them a customer, you've shown them results or whatever. You can convince them that this is something that their audience would be really interested in knowing about. And so you have now kind of won them over in a way, but you don't do that with one little, touch point. You've got to be in touch ongoing. One of our goals is for our clients, for the spokespeople of, for our clients, their spokespeople, to be resources for the media. So we develop such relationships in that the media will reach out to us and say, hey, so-and-so from, that company, I'm writing this story. It's totally unrelated maybe to what that company does, but I'm writing this story on this thing, and I know they have a real expertise there. Can I like pick their brain a little bit? So you're actually giving the journalist something instead of the journalist always giving you something. You're actually giving them advice and information, maybe stats. Maybe you're telling them some things that makes them think. And so when they use you as a resource, oh, that's just gold. It's like that friendship or that family member that, is walking through life with you. They are helping you through something, or they're there when you need them. They're not just always asking for something. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. Right? I mean, it's the same thing as your relationship, as your friendships we talked about. Like Jason Hollick, my longtime friend, has always been there for me, always listened to me, always, it's no different, right? You need somebody there in business to help you, to guide you, to get your message out, to listen to you, to maybe tell you you're wrong, right? Hopefully tell you you're wrong, right? Like that does just not a yes person that's just going to say, oh yeah, that sounds great.
Absolutely.
And go from there, right? And especially in an emerging, like, Calgary's really, really, pumping and coming along, and we've got a great community, great ecosystem here. Saskatoon and Saskatchewan is pretty young. TNT and Jesse has done a great job there, putting some of our startups on the map. So I guess I want to know, like, your journey with BroadPR. What's you do business all over North America. What's next for you?
Oh boy, what's next? What's next is we're always thinking about what's next. We're always thinking about what kinds of tools, what kinds of strategies, what kind of talent can we kind of up level to help our clients? What can we do to better help our clients? So many things have changed. I'm going to tell you, like, we started in 2001. Back in 2001, believe it or not, there were still like physical clippings of coverage. Like you would, I don't know if you remember, there was a service called Bacon's, and there were these other services, and they would physically like cut clippings, and then on the clipping it would tell cut it out of like a newspaper or a magazine or something. That's 23 years ago. That's a long time. And now there's no physical clippings. We have links, and thank God for links, because they also drive SEO and all the other things that the companies need. Valuable links. But anyway, so if you think about, and then we've talked about ChatGPT, and there's other AI tools. There's all sorts of new tools that are out there to measure results. That's one of the things about PR that I think startups really need to be, need to look at carefully, is like, how do we measure this? Sometimes with PR, we can measure things like potential audience reach. We can see how many people clicked on a link. We can see how many interviews we had. We can see how many, pieces of coverage we had. We can do those things. We can look at influencers and, social media and see like who's following and who's, repurposing the story and such. But sometimes it really is just a feel. Like sometimes, a startup might say, I feel like this particular competitor, like they're just everywhere. Like I just feel like they're everywhere, and I want to be that. Like I want to be in the conversation. I want to be in that list when it's written out about all of these different things that are happening. And so you can't necessarily measure a feeling, but you can measure other things. And it's really important, as we have grown and as technology has grown, there's so many more things that we can measure. When PR, when we started back in 2001, the measurement of PR was much more vague. And that frankly, doesn't work nowadays. You cannot implement and invest in something and not understand what the real business value is. And you have to bring it back to business value. Now, I will say the PR is just a part of an overall like marketing or business plan. It is not, a startup shouldn't just say, oh, I'm just going to hire, a PR person and then everything will be great. It needs to align with whatever their overall goals are, right? Like they need to know their audience, they need to have these business objectives, and then we can come in and support those objectives with activities that we know are going to lead to results based on past, based on experience, and based on what we know we can do. But yeah, so I'm not sure if I just kind of rambled in a circle there, but measurement's really important, right? It's kind of
like, oh, absolutely.
Look at AI. Companies are saying like, we are investing millions of dollars into this stuff, and what is my return? Like, are my employees can write a better email? Is that it? Is that why I invested millions of dollars in it? Because that's probably not going to be sustainable. Right. So
But
same with
and
PR, how do you measure it?
And AI is a conversation for another day. And if anybody wants to check it out, and we talked about this a little bit before, Tracy, is that Brenda Beckendorf here in Calgary and Society 5.0, Society 5.0 is an unbelievable, helps you implement. And so, go to another Telling It Like It Is, check it out and talk about it. But, exactly what you said, PR, marketing, IP strategy, sales, business development, grant strategy, they all got to be part of your business plan. You got to have it. It's not going to stay the same. You put it down there, it's going to pivot, it's going to shift, but you have to have an idea in your mind. You have to be willing to say, okay, at this point in my journey as a company, I'm going to need some help here, and here. Hopefully you have the money to do it. If not, you are going to have to learn to do some of that stuff yourself. And as a founder, that's very beneficial if you understand a lot of it, because when you go to hire somebody or go to want to partner with somebody or work with somebody, you can now kind of talk their language, understand what they're saying, and not just kind of be there like a deer in a headlight.
Right. Absolutely. And you know what? I'll just say too, our firm, because we have worked with so many startups and early stage companies, we are very happy to, work with people, give them free advice, do a PR audit, all of those things. And I would suggest that you should work with a firm that's willing to do that, or a consultant. It doesn't have to even be a firm. It could just be an individual consultant. You got to work with people who are willing to invest the time into you. If someone says, well, I'll talk to you for $500, or, I'm going to charge you this or that, I would really go the other way. You really need to work with people who understand startups and early stage companies, and they're willing to invest the time into you, right? And that's not just for PR, that's for like everything. All sorts of practitioners, right? Like, just make sure that, and that's the other thing too, as a startup or an early stage, you can offer other things. You may not have money. Maybe you want to offer some, potential for shares, or potential, maybe it's technology, and you can offer like, free use of the technology in exchange for some advice or whatever, some barter stuff. Those kinds of things still work, and we can do that. We're all in this together. If our clients are successful, then we're successful. And at the end of the day, I really want to work with people that I enjoy and that I like, and that we can, succeed together. And so, I would make sure as a startup to look for someone that is a good fit, and look for someone that's willing to measure and track results, and give you, what you need to explain what the investment was all about. You just can't throw money at things. You have to know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and measure those results.
And you just literally answered my last question.
Oh. Sorry.
It's a good thing though, right? I was like, okay, like that piece of advice to start a PR, like, when do you start? I mean, you just said it, so we actually don't have to go there, because it's something that's so, so important, right? Understanding your journey, understanding where you need to be, understanding when you need it. And again, more importantly, talking to multiple people to find the right fit. And I talk about that all the time, right? Like, people will come to me. We have hundreds and hundreds of startups a year, and it's just like, you know what, you're not ready for us. You know what, go talk to this person. We'll open up this door. Talk to Innovate Calgary. Talk to whoever it may be, right? And make sure that they get the right advice along the journey. And there's no financial reward for that. That's just being a good person. And again, that comes into what we talked about a little early. That's the prairie way. And you might miss that in Toronto or Boston or the Valley or wherever you're going to be. It's something that we're extremely proud about, the way we do it. It's something that we want to keep as we grow, as our tech community grows and our industry grows. We don't want to lose that.
No, I agree. It's really helping each other, and we've got one life to live, and it just makes sense to help each other, to build community, and loyalty, passion, consistency. These are all really key drivers that you really want to pick someone that has those elements. So yeah, definitely. And I've got to say something else too. An SVP that I work with, who's fantastic. She's amazing. She has been talking about, she's head of brand and communications and so forth, and she's fantastic. She is really big on, she read it. There's a survey that came out, and I think the CMO shared it with her, and then she wrote a piece on it. And I'll send you that link later. But
yeah,
it's a survey that it talks about brand, right? And it talks about, more than ever, trust. Trust is the number one thing. Now, that may seem like common sense, but, in the past, it might have been, the biggest bell or the loudest whistle or whatever, but trust is really, in that survey, it talked about the buying cycle is a lot longer now. People are taking longer to make that purchasing decision. Even if they're going to go with that vendor or that product or service, it's taking longer just because of either the economy or how life is these days or whatever. And so, but they're also leaning toward someone who they can trust, someone who has that credibility in the marketplace. And so if you're a startup, if you're a startup in a crowded market, you more than ever need to have some sort of third-party credibility. You've got to have that awareness. You've got to have that thought leadership. And if you're a startup in a not a crowded space, you might want to ask why it's not crowded. Is there a reason I'm the only one providing this service? It could be a good opportunity, or it could be, maybe you need to reconsider. But either way, people are going to do business with people they trust. And that's more so than ever. We know that on a personal level, but this survey really points out that that's on a global level, that's across the board, and that's on even an organizational and corporate level. So it's really interesting. I'll send you that link.
I love it. I mean, and I say that all the time. People do business with people, and that's the bottom line, right? And and trust is obviously the top of that chart. And in my opinion, that's never ever going to change, and it never should change. If it does, then there's probably something wrong with our society.
Right. I agree, 100%.
Not once did I actually mention that you can click on the BroadPR.com website in the comment section. I was like, we had such a conversation. It was such flow and Tracy. I was just like, oh my God, I forgot to say that. But yeah, for anybody that wants any more information, please click on the website. For what's scrolling across the bottom, it's a reality of entrepreneurship. It's something that, we can get in there, get into the psychology. It's a journey you don't have to take alone. There's some tickets left where we're getting close to being sold out. So please sign up, come check us out. Tracy, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your knowledge today. And I am excited already about our next conversation.
Oh, me as well. Thank you so much for having me. And by the way, thank you for, supporting mental health and making that be a priority. Certainly with startups, we know you're working 60, 80 hours a week. You're just trying to get things done. And, that's a really big, important piece of advice is, you've got to take care of yourself. It's like when you're on the plane, you have to put the mask on. I mean, the mask, what is that thing? You got to put it on. Yeah, you got to put the air on before you can help others. And it's important that we stay healthy, that we stay open to talking with each other, and just, that good old-fashioned live communication like you and I are having right now, that is golden. Absolutely. So thank you so much for having me.
Well, I appreciate the kind words. Thank you again. And I hope everybody enjoys the rest of their week. And I'm sure we'll be crossing paths soon. All right, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye.